The Aurelian capital world shone like a jewel in space. Tall spires of crystal and metal curved toward the sky, glowing softly under a pale blue sun. Ships from dozens of star systems hovered in neat patterns above the city, bringing diplomats, traders, and nobles for the royal ceremony. Today was meant to be peaceful. Today was meant to celebrate unity. Ethan Hale stood near the outer hall of the palace, holding a small toolkit in his hands. He wore a simple gray uniform with a human service badge on his shoulder. No one paid him much attention, which was exactly what he was used to. Humans were common across the Concord, but never important. They fixed machines, cleaned corridors, and loaded cargo. Ethan was a jump gate maintenance engineer, brought here only because a gate near the capital had malfunctioned weeks earlier. He had finished his work hours ago, but protocol required him to remain nearby in case of another problem. So he waited, watching alien nobles glide past in robes of light and armor that looked more decorative than useful. Their voices clicked, hummed, or echoed in tones Ethan could not fully understand, though his translator helped enough. At the center of the palace, the Queen of the Aurelian Concord addressed her guests. She was tall, her posture perfect, her presence commanding without effort. Beside her stood Princess Lyrics, younger, curious, and clearly uncomfortable with the weight of attention. Royal guards formed a living wall around them. Ethan was just starting to relax when the floor beneath his boots vibrated. At first, he thought it was a power surge. Then the lights flickered. A deep boom echoed through the palace, followed by screams. The far wall of the ceremonial hall exploded inward. Smoke, fire, and shattered crystal filled the air. Armed figures poured through the breach, their armor dark and unfamiliar. Energy bolts cut through banners and guards alike. Panic spread instantly. Royal guards moved to protect the queen, following strict formation rules. Nobles fled in every direction. Some froze where they stood, unable to act without orders. Ethan's translator flooded his ears with overlapping warnings. He ducked behind a pillar as an energy blast scorched the floor where he had been standing seconds earlier. His heart pounded, but his mind was already working. Attacks like this were never clean. Someone always got separated. He looked back toward the center of the hall. The queen had been pulled away by her guards. But Princess Lyrics was no longer with her. The blast had knocked part of the floor loose, creating a jagged gap. Through the smoke, Ethan saw the princess stumble, her guards either dead or dragged away. She was alone. Ethan did not think about rank, species, or consequences. He moved. He ran toward the gap, staying low as energy fire cracked overhead. One attacker noticed him and fired. The shot grazed Ethan's arm, burning fabric and skin, but he kept going. Pain could wait. Lyrics tried to run, but her long ceremonial clothing slowed her. An attacker blocked her path, weapon raised. Ethan grabbed a loose maintenance cable from the floor, wrapped it around a broken power node, and yanked. The node sparked violently. Lights flared. The attacker flinched just long enough. Ethan slammed into the alien from the side. He was smaller and weaker, but momentum mattered. They crashed into a pillar. The alien dropped the weapon. Ethan kicked it away and pulled Lyrics up. "Run!" he shouted. Though he wasn't sure she understood the word, she understood the intent. They ran into a side corridor as alarms wailed behind them. The corridor was dark, emergency lights flickering red. Ethan knew this area well. He had worked on these systems. That knowledge mattered now. Footsteps echoed behind them. More attackers. Ethan led the princess down a narrow service passage. He sealed a blast door behind them manually, twisting the override with shaking hands. The door closed just as energy fire struck it from the other side. They were trapped, but alive. Lyrics leaned against the wall, breathing fast. Her large eyes stayed fixed on Ethan, filled with fear and confusion. "Stay close," Ethan said softly, keeping his voice calm. "I'll get you out." He checked his toolkit. It wasn't a weapon, but it was something. Humans had learned long ago to use what they had. He accessed a maintenance panel and rerouted power to the corridor ahead. The lights steadied. A map appeared on a small screen. The nearest secure zone was 3 levels down. They moved quietly, but danger followed them. The attackers were systematic, sweeping the palace with military precision. This was not a random raid. This was planned. At a junction, they nearly ran straight into 2 armed figures. Ethan reacted instantly. He tossed a small plasma cutter onto the floor and activated it remotely. The sudden flare blinded the attackers. Ethan grabbed Lyrics and pulled her into a ventilation shaft, sealing the hatch behind them. They crawled through tight metal space as voices shouted below. The shaft opened into a storage chamber filled with equipment crates. Ethan lowered Lyrics down, then dropped after her. His injured arm burned, blood soaking his sleeve, but he ignored it. Another explosion rocked the palace. Dust fell from the ceiling. "They will not stop," Lyrics said quietly through her translator. "They want me dead. They want me dead." Ethan met her gaze. "Then we won't let them have you." They moved again. Each step felt heavier. Ethan's strength was fading, but his will hardened. Humans were not the strongest species. They were not the oldest. But they endured. At the final checkpoint before the secure zone, they found it overrun. Bodies lay scattered, guards and attackers alike. The door controls were destroyed. Ethan studied the wreckage. The attackers were regrouping nearby. Time was running out. He made a decision. He led Lyrics behind a reinforced support wall and pulled out a compact charge used for cutting through hull plating. It was dangerous in enclosed spaces, but he adjusted the output carefully. He placed the charge on the floor beneath the wall. "When I say go, you run through the opening and don't stop," he said. "What about you?" Lyrics asked. "I'll follow," he said, though he wasn't sure if he could. He triggered the charge. The blast was controlled but powerful. The floor collapsed inward, opening a rough path into the secure zone below. Energy fire immediately filled the room as attackers spotted them. "Go!" Ethan shouted. Lyrics ran, slipping through the opening. Ethan followed, but an energy bolt struck him in the back, sending him crashing to the floor. Pain exploded through his body. His vision blurred. He pushed himself forward anyway. Hands grabbed at his legs. He kicked, screamed, and crawled. Another shot burned across his side. He tasted blood. Strong arms caught him before he fell through the opening completely. Royal guards pulled him into the secure zone, weapons raised. The attackers retreated as heavy defenses activated. Ethan collapsed, barely conscious. The last thing he saw was Princess Lyrics kneeling beside him, her expression filled with shock and something else he could not name. Later, when the palace was secured and the wounded counted, the queen was told of what had happened. She watched the recordings in silence. She saw guards hesitate. She saw nobles flee, and she saw a human engineer, unarmed and unimportant, run into fire without being ordered. When she finally went to the medical wing, she stood beside Ethan's bed and studied him carefully. A human had saved her daughter, and that was something the Concord would not forget. Ethan woke slowly, pulled back to the world by a steady humming sound and a dull ache that seemed to exist everywhere at once. His eyes opened to a ceiling he did not recognize, smooth and curved, glowing with soft white light. For a moment, he thought he had failed, that the palace had fallen, and this was some strange afterlife. Then pain sharpened, and reality returned. He tried to move and failed. His body felt heavy, wrapped in invisible weight. Tubes ran along his arms and chest, warm fluid flowing through them. Machines surrounded the bed, their lights blinking in careful patterns. "He is awake." The voice was calm and melodic, translated smoothly into Ethan's language. He turned his head slightly and saw several Aurelian medical officers standing nearby. Their tall forms were wrapped in clean white garments, their eyes focused on glowing displays. "Easy," one of them said. "Your injuries were severe. You are safe." Safe. The word settled into Ethan's mind slowly. He let out a shaky breath he hadn't realized he was holding. The memories came rushing back: fire, screams, the princess falling, energy bolts tearing through stone. "The princess," he said, his voice rough. "Is she?" "She lives," the medic replied. "Because of you." Ethan closed his eyes. Relief washed over him, stronger than the pain. He slept again, and when he woke the second time, the room felt different, quieter. The machines were still there, but now someone else stood beside his bed. Queen Aurelian Vatia did not need guards to announce her presence. She stood tall and still, her expression unreadable, her gaze sharp enough to make even seasoned generals lower their eyes. Ethan had seen her only from a distance before. Up close, her presence was overwhelming. He tried to sit up. His body protested. "Do not," the queen said. "You have done more than enough." Ethan stopped, unsure what to say. Humans did not speak to queens. "Not like this. You acted without orders," she continued. "Without protection. Without obligation." "Yes, Your Majesty," Ethan said carefully. "Why?" The question was simple, but heavy. Ethan thought for a moment. "She needed help," he said. No one else was there. The queen studied him in silence. Her eyes flicked briefly to the medical readouts, then back to his face. "In my court," she said, "every action is governed by tradition. Every movement follows rules older than your species. And yet, when those rules failed, you did not." She turned away, hands clasped behind her back. "You saved my daughter. That debt cannot be measured in credits or honors." Ethan swallowed. "I didn't do it for a reward." "I know," the queen replied. "That is why it matters." She left without another word, her footsteps silent against the floor. Ethan lay there, confused and exhausted, unaware that his life had already changed. News traveled quickly through the palace, then through the city, and then across the Concord. The attack was no longer secret. The traitors had been repelled, but questions remained. Who had planned it? How had they reached the heart of the capital? And always, there was the story of the human. Some called him a hero. Others called him a problem. Ethan recovered slowly. Aurelian medicine was advanced, but his body was still human. Each day, he pushed himself a little further, relearning how to walk without pain, how to lift his injured arm. Medical staff watched him with quiet interest. Humans healed differently than most species, slower in some ways, faster in others. Princess Lyrics visited him often. At first, she came with guards, standing near the door, unsure what to say. Later, she came alone. She brought stories of the court, of debates and arguments, and fear hidden behind polite words. "They argue about you," she said one day, sitting beside his bed. "Some believe you were part of the attack. Others believe you are dangerous because you are not controlled." Ethan smiled weakly. "That sounds about right. Why did you really stay?" she asked. "When you were injured, when escape was possible?" He looked at her, then away. "Humans don't always think in long plans," he said. "Sometimes we just decide who we won't leave behind." Quote, Lyrics considered this. It was a strange idea to her. In Aurelian culture, sacrifice was expected only when commanded. Choice made it different. When Ethan was finally cleared to leave the medical wing, he expected to be escorted out of the palace, thanked, and sent back to his ordinary life. Instead, he was summoned to the royal court. The hall was vast, filled with nobles, advisors, military leaders, and foreign envoys. The air was thick with tension. Ethan walked alone down the center path, his simple uniform standing out among the glowing robes and armor. Whispers followed him. A laborer. A human. Unacceptable. The queen rose from her throne. Silence fell instantly. "Ethan Hale," she said, her voice carrying through the hall. "You stand before this court, not as a subject, nor as a servant, but as one who acted when others did not." Murmurs spread. "You saved the life of my daughter," the queen continued. "You preserved the future of this throne." A noble stepped forward. "With respect, Your Majesty, he is an outsider. His presence here is a risk." "Everything is a risk," the queen replied calmly, "including inaction." She turned back to Ethan. "You will remain within this court under my authority." The reaction was immediate and explosive. Voices rose in protest. Shock rippled through the hall. A human? In the royal court? This violates— The queen raised one hand. Silence returned. He will observe, she said. He will advise when asked. He will learn. And we will learn from him. Ethan's heart pounded. He had no idea what to do. He bowed awkwardly, unsure of the proper gesture. The queen's eyes softened, just slightly. You do not belong among servants, she said. You belong where decisions are made. That night, Ethan was given quarters within the palace, not luxurious, but secure. Guards watched him closely, not all of them friendly. He felt the weight of countless eyes, measuring him, judging him. Days passed, then weeks. Ethan listened more than he spoke. He learned the rhythms of the court, the unspoken rules, the quiet rivalries. He noticed things others missed, patterns in patrol schedules, delays in communication, assumptions that no one questioned. He spoke up once during a security meeting, pointing out a flaw in the emergency response network. The room went quiet. Some laughed. Then the queen asked him to explain. By the end of the session, changes were ordered. That made him enemies. Attempts to discredit him followed. Accusations of espionage. Claims that he manipulated the princess. Ethan faced them calmly, answering honestly. He had nothing to hide. Princess Lyrics defended him openly, which only fueled resentment. You should be afraid, she told him one evening, as they walked through a garden of glowing plants. I am, Ethan said. I just don't let it stop me. Far away, in hidden chambers, those who had planned the first attack watched and waited. The human had survived. Worse, he had been welcomed. They began planning again. And in the quiet moments between court sessions and whispered threats, the queen observed Ethan carefully. She had ruled for centuries, seen countless species rise and fall. In the human, she saw something dangerous and powerful, not strength, not intelligence, but the will to stand when others chose to kneel. The court believed the crisis was over. They were wrong. The palace returned to its routine on the surface, but underneath, tension grew like a hidden storm. Guards doubled their patrols. Advisors spoke softly behind closed doors. Smiles became careful, measured things. Everyone knew something was wrong, even if no one said it aloud. Ethan felt it every day. He was no longer ignored. That alone made him uneasy. As he walked through the halls, conversations stopped. Eyes followed him. Some were curious, some hostile, a few openly angry. He had saved the princess, but that did not make him welcome. It made him visible. Visibility, Ethan knew, was dangerous. He spent most of his time observing. The queen had ordered that he be allowed to sit in on certain council meetings. He did not speak unless asked. He listened, watched how information moved, how decisions slowed as they climbed layers of tradition. During one meeting, a military commander reported that all external threats had been neutralized. The room relaxed. Ethan frowned. May I ask a question? He said quietly. Several heads turned, irritated. The queen nodded. You may. You may. If the attackers were destroyed, Ethan said, choosing his words carefully. Why were internal access codes used during the first assault? Silence followed. That information is classified, one advisor snapped. But relevant, Ethan replied calmly. External enemies don't have palace-level clearance. The queen's gaze sharpened. Answer him. Reluctantly, the advisor admitted that several internal codes had been compromised. No source had been identified. Ethan nodded slowly. Then the threat didn't leave. It's still here. That was the moment some in the room began to truly hate him. Not long after, the first attempt on Ethan's life was made. It was subtle. A maintenance platform failed while he crossed a high walkway. The magnetic locks disengaged without warning. Ethan felt the floor tilt and reacted on instinct, diving forward and grabbing a railing as the platform fell away into open air. Alarms screamed. Guards rushed in too late. Investigators called it a malfunction. Ethan did not believe them. Princess Lyrics found him later that day in the observation chamber, staring out at the stars. His hands were still shaking slightly. "They want you gone," she said softly. "I know," Ethan replied. "Which means I'm in the right place." She looked at him, worried. "You don't have to stay." Sensitive. "Yes, I do," he said. "Because if they're willing to kill me, they're willing to try again. And next time, they won't miss." The second attempt came days later. Poison in his food. A trace amount. Meant to weaken, not kill. He caught it only because human taste detected something off that Aurelian biology would not. After that, the Queen assigned guards permanently to him. Loyal ones. Still, Ethan knew guards could be delayed. Systems could be altered. Trust was fragile, so he began preparing. He reviewed security logs, emergency protocols, communication delays. He asked questions that annoyed people. He noticed how long it took for orders to move from the throne to the outer defenses. Too long. The court assumed control came from hierarchy. Humans assumed control came from speed. Princess Lyrics watched him work late into the night, surrounded by holographic displays. "You think they will strike again soon," she said. "They have to," Ethan replied. "The longer they wait, the more they lose control." "And if they succeed?" she asked. Ethan met her gaze. "Then everything ends. For your people, for mine." She nodded slowly. For the first time, she truly understood the weight he carried. The strike came during the Festival of Renewal. It was a perfect choice. The palace was full. Security was divided between ceremony and celebration. The Queen was scheduled to appear publicly, something she rarely did anymore. As music filled the halls and light displays painted the sky, Ethan stood at the edge of the central control chamber, uneasy. His instincts screamed that this was wrong. He tried to warn the council. Some listened. Most dismissed him as paranoid. Then the lights went out. Not flickered, not dimmed, gone. Screams followed. Emergency lighting failed to activate in half the palace. Defense systems did not respond. "This isn't an attack," one advisor said in confusion. "It's a systems failure." Ethan was already moving. "They didn't break the system," he said. "They took control of it." Explosions echoed from the lower levels. Not random. Precise. Strategic. "The Queen," Lyrics said, fear sharp in her voice. Ethan grabbed a control panel and forced it open. "They'll try to isolate her first." He rerouted power manually, bypassing court authorization entirely. Alarms blared as overrides triggered. "That's forbidden," a commander shouted. "Then stop me," Ethan said, not looking back. No one did. Across the palace, hidden operatives moved. They wore royal colors. They knew every corridor. They eliminated guards, quietly and efficiently, but they had not planned for chaos. Ethan broadcast a palace-wide message, using emergency frequencies. "If you can hear this, move toward lighted areas. Do not wait for orders. Protect each other." Aurelians hesitated. Humans would not have. But something unexpected happened. Lower-ranked guards, technicians, and servants began moving. They followed the human voice. They acted without command. Defense teams formed where none had been planned. In the throne chamber, the Queen stood calm as attackers breached the outer doors. Her guards fought bravely, but were outnumbered. Then the doors behind the attackers exploded inward. Ethan led a group of mixed species through the smoke. They were not elite. They were not trained for battle. They were ready. The fight was short and brutal. Not Bekazivsk, but decisive. The attackers expected obedience. They found resistance. When the last traitor fell, the silence was heavy. Security systems rebooted one by one. Power returned. Communication channels reopened. Across the palace, the coup collapsed. Later, in the aftermath, the Queen stood before the court again. The traitors were named. Evidence displayed openly. No secrets. No excuses. All of it traced back to one truth. The attackers believed control came from fear and order. They were wrong. Ethan stood quietly at the side of the chamber, bruised and exhausted. Princess Lyrics stood near him, alive. The queen addressed the court. "Tonight, tradition failed us," she said. "And survival did not come from rank or birth." Her gaze moved to Ethan. It came from the will to act. Some bowed their heads, others clenched their fists. Ethan knew this was not over. But for the first time, the Concord knew it too, and that changed everything. The palace felt different after the coup failed. The air was calmer, but heavier, like a storm that had passed yet left the ground soaked and fragile. Repairs were underway everywhere. Scorched walls were being rebuilt. Damaged systems were being replaced. Guards moved with sharper focus, no longer trusting comfort or routine. Ethan felt the change more than most. He was no longer seen as a strange guest or a temporary problem. Now, he was a symbol. Some looked at him with respect, others with resentment, a few with fear. None ignored him anymore. He stood on a balcony overlooking the capital city, watching ships move through the sky in steady lines. For the first time since arriving on this world, he wondered if he truly belonged here, or if he ever had. Princess Lyrics joined him quietly. "You saved us again," she said. Ethan shook his head. "I just helped people do what they were already capable of." "That is not how my people see it," she replied. "They see a human who changed the direction of history." Ethan sighed. "History never changes because of one person." She smiled faintly. "Perhaps. But sometimes it starts with one." Later that day, the queen summoned the full royal court. The hall was filled once more. But the mood was different from before. There was no noise, no careless movement. Every noble, commander, and advisor understood the weight of what had nearly been lost. Ethan stood near the edge, hands clasped behind his back, wearing the same simple uniform he had always worn. He did not try to stand out. The queen rose. "The Aurelian Concord has endured for thousands of cycles," she began. "We believed our strength came from tradition, hierarchy, and control." She paused, letting her words sink in. "Yet when those systems were turned against us, they nearly destroyed us." Her gaze swept the room. "We survived because someone acted without permission, without fear of consequence, without concern for status." She turned toward Ethan. "A human." A low murmur spread through the court. Ethan felt every eye on him. He remained still. "Ethan Hale," the queen said. "Step forward." He did. "You were born outside this Concord," she continued. "Your species is young by our standards. Your influence is limited. And yet, when the moment came, you stood where others fell back." She lifted a ceremonial sigil, glowing softly with royal authority. "By my decree, you are named Royal Strategic Advisor to the Crown." The hall erupted. Voices clashed, some in protest, others in shock. "A human cannot. This is unprecedented." The queen raised her hand. Silence returned. "This court will adapt," she said calmly. "Or it will break." She placed the sigil in Ethan's hands. He looked down at it, overwhelmed. "Your Majesty," he said carefully. "I never asked for this." "I know," the queen replied. "That is why you will not abuse it." From that moment, change moved quickly. Humanity's status within the Concord shifted. Earth received diplomatic invitations it had never imagined. Trade agreements were rewritten. Joint research initiatives began. Humans were no longer just labor. They were partners. Not everyone welcomed this. Some nobles withdrew support quietly. Others plotted in silence. But the open defiance was gone. The queen's authority, strengthened by survival, was absolute. Ethan worked long hours. He advised on security reforms, emergency response structures, and communication networks. He pushed for flexibility, redundancy, and decentralized command. Some resisted, many listened. Princess Lyrics trained harder than ever, learning not just court politics, but crisis leadership. She studied human history with intense focus. "Your people survive impossible odds," she said one night. Ethan thought for a moment. "Because we don't expect the universe to be fair," he replied. "We plan for failure." Clued. She nodded. Then my people must learn the same. Beyond the Concord, other species watched carefully. Rumors spread. Some feared humans would rise too quickly. Others saw opportunity. Messages arrived from distant systems. Requests for alliances. Warnings. Threats. The galaxy had noticed. One evening, Ethan stood once more in the observation chamber, where he had nearly fallen weeks earlier. The floor had been reinforced. The systems redesigned. Mistakes corrected. The Queen joined him. "You could return to your people," she said. "You have earned that right." Ethan looked out at the stars. "I never wanted power," he said. "I just didn't want to watch things fall apart." "That is why you belong here," she replied. She studied him closely. "Humans frighten my advisors." He smiled faintly. "We frighten ourselves too." The Queen allowed herself a rare smile. Then perhaps the galaxy should pay attention. Far away, on Earth, news of Ethan's rise spread across networks and homes. Some called him a hero, others a fool. Many simply watched in awe. For the first time, humanity was not reacting to the galaxy, it was shaping it. On the day the Concord officially recognized humanity as a protected and equal species, Ethan stood beside the Queen and Princess Lyrics. Cameras recorded history being made. Ethan felt out of place, but steady. He had not conquered worlds. He had not commanded fleets. He had acted, and that had been enough. As the ceremony ended and the crowd dispersed, Princess Lyrics spoke quietly. "What happens next?" Ethan looked at the endless stars beyond the palace dome. "Now," he said, "we make sure this never happens again." The Queen nodded in agreement. The court doors closed behind them, sealing a new era into place. Humanity had not demanded a seat among the stars. It had earned one.